The question. The Stellar Assembly's grand amphitheater floated in the void between galaxies, a monument to cooperation built from compressed neutron matter and stabilized wormhole anchors. Inside, delegates from 912 civilizations gathered for their quarterly session. Some breathed chlorine, others existed as pure electromagnetic patterns. Some had evolved past physical form entirely, but all of them shared one absolute rule: never discuss Section 9. Warlord Draxon of the Kethril Ascendancy had no patience for ancient taboos. His species had joined the Assembly only 15 cycles ago, after subjugating 70 star systems in a decade of rapid conquest. The Kethril were warriors, six-limbed predators with crystalline exoskeletons and a cultural philosophy built on dominance through strength. They feared nothing in known space. Standing before the Assembly for the first time as chief delegate, Draxon projected the navigational charts onto the central holosphere. His four primary eyes gleamed with ambition as he gestured toward the data. "Honored Assembly," his words translated through quantum resonance fields, "I bring a matter of strategic concern. Our survey teams have identified a spatial anomaly. Section 9, covering approximately 4,000 cubic light-years, remains completely unclaimed. No territorial markers, no trade routes, no registered inhabitants. This represents a massive resource waste." The ancient being known as Luminos, a photonic intelligence who had witnessed the birth and death of stars for 30,000 years, pulsed with what might have been a sigh. Every new species eventually asked this question. It was as inevitable as entropy. "Section 9 is not unclaimed, Warlord Draxon," Luminos said, voice rippled through the chamber. "It is occupied." "By whom?" Draxon demanded. "I see no designation in the registry, no delegation seats, no representatives." "By Terrans," Luminos said simply. The word hung in the simulated atmosphere like radiation. Some species activated privacy shields, others emitted pheromones of distress, a few simply went silent, their communication nodes dark. "Terrans?" Draxon's mandibles clicked with confusion. "I have never encountered this species. Are they powerful? Do they possess advanced weapons?" "Both," an older delegate whispered from the shadows, "and far worse." Draxon's exoskeleton rattled, a Kethril laugh. "Then why do they hide? Why are they not part of this assembly? The Kethril Ascendancy has defeated empires triple our size. We have conquered worlds others deemed impregnable. We do not fear technological superiority." Luminos drifted closer to Draxon. Though the photonic being had no face, their presence radiated something like sorrow, or perhaps warning. 900 years ago, Terrans achieved faster than light capability. They were young, aggressive, their technology primitive but brutally effective. We welcomed them as we welcome all emerging species. We invited them to join the Assembly. We offered them the advantages of galactic civilization. And, Draxon prompted, they refused to disarm. Every species in this assembly has agreed to certain protocols. We limit our destructive capabilities. We conduct conflicts according to established conventions. We never deploy extinction-level weapons. We never target civilian populations. We never use certain technologies deemed too dangerous. "That sounds like weakness," Draxon muttered. "Terrans thought so too," Luminos said. "They examined our civilization and called it fragile. They said any species that limited its own weapons would eventually fall to one that did not. They refused to join unless they could maintain their entire arsenal without restriction." "Then the Assembly should have enforced compliance," Draxon said. "Surely 900 civilizations could have brought one primitive species into alignment." Luminos's photonic form dimmed until they were barely visible. 53 species tried. They formed what was called the Compliance Coalition. The war lasted 11 years. And Terrans surrendered?
No, Luminos said quietly. 8 of those 53 species no longer exist. 14 suffered population losses exceeding 70%. 21 endured damage that required centuries to repair. And Terrans lost billions but never surrendered. In the end, we begged them for peace. The treaty. Draxon stared at the ancient being. Surely this was exaggeration, propaganda. One species could not defeat 53. The mathematics made it impossible. The Phobos Accords became our salvation. Terrans agreed to isolate themselves. They claimed Section 9, established absolute borders, and vowed never to expand beyond them. In exchange, we agreed never to enter their territory, never to contact them, and never to speak of them to emerging species. That sounds like imprisonment, Draxon observed. That is what we told ourselves, Luminos admitted. But the truth is simpler. We gave them what they wanted, complete autonomy, and they gave us what we needed, a promise they would never wage war against us again. General Vecra, Draxon's military advisor, stepped forward. She was smaller than the warlord, but covered in scars from 100 campaigns. Luminos, with respect, this was 900 years ago. Species evolve, technology advances. Perhaps these Terrans have declined in isolation. Perhaps they have self-destructed. Perhaps they pose no threat whatsoever. That possibility terrifies me more than any other, Luminos replied. 900 years alone, 900 years developing weapons without our restrictions, 900 years preparing for the day someone tests the border again. No, General, I fear they are exponentially more dangerous now than they were during the war. Draxon dismissed this with a gesture. Stories, ancient fears. The Kethril ascendancy deals in facts, not mythology. I propose we send a diplomatic expedition to Section 9. 9 centuries is sufficient time for any species to recognize the value of cooperation. We assess the situation, offer renewed contact, and either welcome them to the assembly or claim the territory if they have vanished, Luminos finished sharply. Draxon, you see opportunity where you should see warning. The assembly erupted in debate. Some species agreed with Draxon. They had never seen Terrans and found it difficult to fear them. Others, the civilizations old enough to remember, argued vehemently against testing the Accords. But the Kethril ascendancy was powerful. They had many allies among younger species who had never seen the compliance war. After hours of argumentation, no consensus emerged. The vote failed. Draxon left the amphitheater with his head held high. He had planted doubt. Now he simply needed to let it grow. The Crossing. 4 weeks later, Draxon stood on the command deck of the battlecruiser Absolute Dominion. Behind him, arrayed in perfect attack formation, floated 247 Kethril warships, the largest fleet his empire had assembled in 3 generations. Each vessel carried enough firepower to shatter a planetary core. Their shields could withstand sustained bombardment from fusion weapons. Their crews were veterans of conquest, disciplined and fearless. Warlord, General Vecra said from her station, the Assembly explicitly rejected this mission. We are violating their direct guidance. The Assembly could not agree, Draxon corrected. Disagreement is not prohibition. Besides, we are not invading, we are merely visiting. Luminos will be furious. Luminos is ancient and afraid. It is time for younger, bolder species to lead. These Terrans have hidden long enough. Today we discover the truth behind the fear. The fleet accelerated towards Section 9's boundary. As they approached, automated beacon systems activated, warning signals in dozens of languages, including several that no living species spoke anymore. The translation matrices struggled with the archaic syntax, but managed fragments. Proceed no further. Death awaits. They do not forgive.
Draxon laughed at the melodrama. The ancients certainly understood psychological warfare, but the Kethril were not easily intimidated. They crossed into Section 9 without incident. Sensors swept the space ahead, searching for defenses, weapons platforms, patrol vessels. They found nothing, just empty space and natural stellar phenomena. "Sensor report," Vecra ordered. "Negative contacts across all spectrums," the sensor officer replied. "No ships, no stations, no artificial gravity wells, nothing but a yellow star system approximately 15 light-years ahead." "They are not even monitoring their own border," Draxon said with disbelief. "Either they are supremely confident or completely primitive." "Or supremely clever," Vecra muttered. The fleet pushed deeper, 50 light-years into Section 9, then 100, still nothing. No patrols, no warnings, no contact. It was as though Terrans had simply vanished. Finally, their long-range scanners detected something, a yellow star with multiple planets, orbital structures around the third world, energy signatures everywhere. This was no dead system, this was inhabited. "Life signs?" Draxon demanded. "Approximately 17 billion on the primary world and associated orbital structures. Carbon-based biology similar to 40% of known species. Technology appears curious." "Curious how?" "Their power generation is less efficient than ours. Their FTL drives are slower, but their communication networks are extraordinarily dense, and I am detecting energy signatures I cannot classify." Draxon studied the data. 17 billion individuals. The Kethril homeworld hosted 60 billion. This Terran civilization was smaller than the ancient stories suggested. "Advance to orbital distance," he ordered. "All ships, demonstrate battle formation. Let them see what they face." The Kethril fleet moved toward the blue-green world designated Earth. 247 warships arranged in an intimidating pattern designed to trigger instinctual fear responses in most species. As they settled into orbit, a single ship appeared on their sensors. It was small, perhaps the quarter the mass of a Kethril battlecruiser. Angular, aggressive design, covered in what looked like weapon ports. It moved toward them with unsettling speed. "Analysis?" Draxon asked. "Military vessel. Design approximately 3 centuries old based on hull configuration. Designation translates as Remembrance." "One ship," Draxon laughed. "They send one antique to meet 247 modern warships. Either they are suicidal or this is all they have left." The Terran vessel stopped several thousand kilometers away. A communication request came through. Draxon accepted it. The holographic display activated, showing a Terran female. Bilateral symmetry, 2 eyes, brown skin, short dark hair, military uniform in midnight blue. Her expression was utterly calm, but something in her eyes made Vecra's combat instincts scream warning. "I am Commander Elise Okafor of the Terran Defense Coordination," the human said. Her voice was ice over steel. "You have violated the Phobos Accords. You have entered Terran space without authorization. You have 60 seconds to initiate withdrawal. This is your only warning." Draxon stared at her. Then he laughed, a harsh sound his translator rendered as grinding crystal. "You dare issue ultimatums? I am Warlord Draxon of the Kethril Ascendancy. Behind me are 247 capital ships. Each one carries enough firepower to glass your orbital infrastructure. You have one outdated vessel. Choose your next words carefully, Terran." Okafor's expression did not change. 45 seconds. The demonstration. Draxon's exoskeleton flushed with anger. This primitive was either insane or ignorant. "Listen carefully, Commander. Your species has been isolated for 9 centuries. The galaxy has evolved. The Kethril Ascendancy alone controls more territory than your species ever claimed. We came here offering you a choice, either rejoin galactic civilization under our guidance or be swept aside by history." 30 seconds, Okafor replied. "You do not understand your situation. Allow me to demonstrate." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target that derelict orbital platform at coordinates 447. Destroy it." One of the battlecruisers fired. A beam of coherent plasma lanced across space, striking an orbital structure. For a moment, defensive fields held. Then they collapsed.
The orbital platform exploded in brilliant silence, debris scattering into the void. Draxon turned back to Okafor. That platform had shields. We destroyed it in seconds. What do you imagine we could do to your world? Okafor's face had changed. The calm was gone, replaced with something that looked like glacial fury. When she spoke, each word carried weight that made even Draxon hesitate. That platform was not derelict. It was a memorial. 412 people died there in an industrial accident 217 years ago. We preserved it as a grave. You just desecrated the resting place of 412 souls. Draxon's confidence wavered. She continued, her voice like absolute zero. You came here with your fleet to intimidate us. You came believing ancient warnings were exaggerations. You came believing we would submit to superior numbers. Warlord Draxon of the Kethril Ascendancy, you have made 3 critical errors today. And what are those? Draxon asked, unease creeping into his voice. Your first error was entering our space. Your second was making threats. Your third was firing a weapon in our system. She leaned forward. You have declared war on Terra. May whatever gods your species believes in have mercy on you, because we will not. The transmission ended. For 3 heartbeats, the Draxon bridge was silent. Then every sensor display exploded with contacts. Ships materialized from nowhere, thousands of them surrounding the Kethril fleet in a perfect sphere. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. They'd been there all along, invisible, watching every move since the moment Draxon crossed the border. How many? Draxon whispered. Counting 4,713 discrete vessels. They were cloaked, stealth technology beyond anything in our databases. They've been observing us since we entered the system. Vecra looked at the tactical display and understood. This was not first contact. This was an execution. The Terrans had let them come, let them make threats, let them fire their weapon, let them condemn themselves. Warlord, she said quietly, I believe we just learned why the Assembly fears Section 9. The Terran ships began to move. The lesson. The battle lasted 9 hours. When it ended, 193 Kethril ships were destroyed. 54 were disabled but intact, their weapons offline, engines dead, life support barely functional. 247 had entered. 54 would leave. Draxon sat on the floor of his command deck, his exoskeleton cracked, all 6 limbs trembling. Around him, the bridge crew tended to wounds. Half were dead. Systems sparked and hissed, but Absolute Dominion still had power, still had life support. Commander Okafor's face appeared on the main display. She looked tired, but her voice remained firm. Warlord Draxon, your fleet is broken. 247 ships entered our space. 54 remain functional. But you are alive. All of you are alive. That was a choice we made. Why? Draxon managed. Why not kill us all? Because we are not conquerors. We are survivors. You entered our territory. You threatened us. We stopped you. That was necessary. Killing you was not. She paused. Your disabled vessels will be towed to the border by Assembly ships. We have already contacted Luminos. They are sending a recovery fleet.
The Assembly will help us? Draxon asked bitterly. They will retrieve you. What happens after is between you and them. Okafor's expression softened slightly. Warlord, before you leave, I need you to understand something. 900 years ago, the Assembly demanded we disarm. They said our methods were too brutal. They attacked us when we refused. The display split, showing archival footage. Terrans fighting against overwhelming odds, cities burning, primitive spacecraft ramming into advanced warships because they had no other weapons, children training for combat, entire planets mobilized for total war. They tried to civilize us, Okafor continued. They failed. We spent 9 centuries alone. While the Assembly explored cooperation, we explored the limits of warfare. While they built peace, we built the ultimate defense. We did not do this to conquer anyone. We did it to ensure no one could ever conquer us. The footage shifted to modern Terran technology, weapons that bent space-time, ships that could appear anywhere instantly, defensive systems that made conventional attacks meaningless. "No species enters Terran space," Okafor said, each word deliberate. "That is the rule. That has always been the rule. You thought you could change it. Now you know otherwise, and the galaxy will remember what happens when that rule is broken." The transmission ended. 6 days later, Draxon stood before the Stellar Assembly. His exoskeleton was repaired but dull. He had not slept. He had not eaten. He had done nothing but review recordings of the battle, trying to understand how 247 warships had been destroyed by an enemy who seemed to predict their every move. Luminos waited at the center of the amphitheater, photonic form pulsing with patient sadness. "Warlord Draxon, you defied the Assembly wisdom. You violated the Phobos Accords. You entered Terran space. What did you learn?" Draxon looked at the ancient being, then at the 912 species watching him, waiting. "I learned," he said slowly, "that some warnings are not myths, that some borders exist for everyone's protection, and that the galaxy is fortunate, extraordinarily fortunate, that Terrans choose isolation." "Explain," Luminos said gently. "They could have killed us all in minutes. Their technology exceeds ours in every category. Their tactics, their weapons, their coordination, everything was superior. But they chose to disable us rather than destroy us. They chose to let survivors return with the truth." Draxon paused. "That restraint is more terrifying than their weapons. It means they are choosing peace, but choice can always be reversed." Luminos pulsed brighter. "And what will you tell young species who question the Accords?" "That Section 9 remains empty for a reason. The Terrans are not prisoners in their space. We are protected from them by theirs. That the border exists not to contain them, but to protect us. And that anyone who tests that border will learn the same lesson we did, painfully." The Assembly voted unanimously to reinforce the Phobos Accords. New warning systems were installed along Section 9's borders. The complete history of both wars, the Compliance War and Draxon's incursion, became mandatory education for all member species. And in Section 9, Commander Elise Okafor stood on the command deck of her flagship, watching sensor feeds that showed the Kethral fleet limping away, escorted by Assembly vessels. "Do you think they learned?" her executive officer asked. "Some did. Some will not. There is always another species that thinks they are different, stronger, smarter. They all learn the same lesson eventually." "How long do we maintain the watch?" Okafor looked out at the stars, at the vast galaxy beyond their borders, where civilizations rose and fell, where peace was negotiated and war was waged according to rules that made sense to everyone, except Terra. "Forever," she said quietly. "We do this forever if we have to, because the alternative is surrendering the only thing worth more than life itself, the freedom to choose our own path." The Terran ships dispersed, returning to their hidden positions throughout the system. The watch continued, as it had for 900 years, as it would for 900 more. And Section 9 remained empty, not because Terra was weak, but because Terra was strong enough that everyone else had finally learned to respect the choice they had made so long ago. The choice to stand alone rather than kneel together.